My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 31, a marketing manager in Miami, and my biggest flaw? I've always been too trusting. My ex traded me for a millionaire. He mocked me as ordinary, erased 3 years of love, and flaunted his new life online. What didn't he expect? I'd be the woman living in the penthouse next door. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Have you ever been betrayed in love? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know I'm not the only one who's felt this way. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it comes in whispers, in small moments that don't hurt right away, until one day they all add up and crush you. Jason and I had been together for 3 years. He wasn't my first boyfriend, but he was the first man I really thought I'd marry. He was charming, good-looking in that every hair-perfect kind of way, and he knew how to make people laugh. My friends told me he was a catch. My coworkers said I was lucky, and me? I believed them. But being with Jason was like standing on shifting sand. His compliments always came with qualifiers. You look beautiful in that dress. For someone who shops at outlets. Or, you're smart, though not the ambitious type, like Victoria at my firm. I ignored the sting because when Jason smiled, it felt like sunlight. And when he kissed me, I thought maybe I was overthinking. The truth hit me one humid Thursday night in July. He came home late, smelling faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. He tossed a suitcase onto the couch like it weighed nothing. "Where are you going?" I asked. He didn't meet my eyes. "I'm moving out." "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My chest hollowed. "What? Why?" He finally looked at me, expression flat. "I've met someone. She can give me things you can't." My voice cracked. "Like what?" He smirked. "A future." And just like that, he was gone. At first, I thought it was another woman my age, maybe someone prettier, more successful. But then the truth surfaced like a knife through water. 2 weeks later, Instagram delivered the blow. There he was, in a tailored suit, champagne in one hand, his other arm wrapped around a woman twice my age but glittering in diamonds. They were on a yacht with sunset behind them. His caption? "Upgrade." The comments gutted me. "She's gorgeous." "Power couple." "Jason, you deserve this." Every like was another dagger. I cried until my throat was raw. I stopped eating for days, surviving on coffee and crackers. At work, I smiled through meetings, but my coworkers whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. My students, because yes, even grown women feel like students when they're learning. Heartbreak the hard way. Were Instagram? Stories and photos of friends' weddings that all seemed to mock me, the man I'd planned my life. Around had tossed me aside like a broken toy. And worse, he flaunted it. My neighbor, Eric, noticed the silence. He leaned over our shared balcony one night, concern etched into his face. "Rach," he said, "you haven't played your music in days." "That's not you," I whispered. "He left me." "For her? For money?" Eric's jaw tightened. "Then he's not worth a single tear." I wanted to believe him. But at that moment, I felt disposable. Like I really was ordinary, like Jason had said. For weeks, I lived in that fog, going through motions, crying in bathrooms, avoiding places Jason might be. But slowly, something shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the sheer humiliation of being discarded so publicly. But one night, sitting on my balcony with tear tracks drying on my face, I whispered to myself, "I won't stay broken." Those 4 words didn't fix everything. But they planted a seed. A month later, life forced my hand. My landlord announced he was selling the building. I needed a new place, fast. I scrolled through listings late into the night, my stomach twisting as rent soared far beyond my budget. And then, somehow, a miracle appeared. A luxury apartment building downtown, offering a promotion for new tenants. It felt insane. Too big for me. Too glamorous. But something inside me whispered, why not? Why not start over bold this time? I signed the lease, packed my things, and moved. The first night in my new place, I stood on the balcony, glass of wine in hand, staring at the Miami skyline. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. But then I glanced to my right. Another balcony. Another penthouse. Music drifted across the humid night air. Laughter, too. And when I stepped closer, my breath caught in my throat. Because standing there, arms still draped around his millionaire, upgrade, was Jason. The man who had left me for money, the one who mocked me as ordinary, was my new next-door neighbor, and he had no idea I was about to ruin him. Before Jason, my life in Miami was steady. Not perfect, not glamorous, but steady. I worked as a marketing manager for a mid-size firm near Brickell. My days spent juggling ad campaigns, client calls, and endless spreadsheets. It wasn't the high-octane world of hedge funds or luxury real estate, but it paid the bills. More importantly, it gave me a sense of purpose. My apartment wasn't much either. A one-bedroom with peeling paint on the balcony railing and a view of a parking lot. But it was mine. On weekends, I'd drag my old record player onto the balcony, let Fleetwood Mac spin, and drink cheap wine with my neighbor, Eric. He was like a brother, always ready with a corny joke or a plate of takeout when I forgot to eat. If I'm honest, I thought that kind of quiet life was enough, until Jason swept in. We met at a rooftop bar during one of those sticky Miami nights when the air feels like silk and strangers feel like possibilities. He spotted me struggling with a stubborn cork and swooped in like a movie cliché. "Need a hand?" he asked. I laughed. "I think the cork's winning." With a flourish, he popped it open in seconds. There, crisis averted. "You owe me a glass." That was Jason, smooth, charming, and just pushy enough to make you feel chosen. From that night, he pursued me with intensity, lavish dinners, unexpected flowers at the office, texts that made me blush. My friends swooned over him, saying things like, "Rachel, he's the total package." I told myself I'd finally found the man who would see me, love me, and build a future with me. But looking back, the signs were always there. When we walked through fancy neighborhoods, Jason's eyes lingered not on the ocean views but on the Bentley parked out front. He once paused in front of a penthouse tower and whispered, "Someday I'll live there." Not in some shoebox like yours. It stung, but I laughed it off. I always laugh things off with Jason. At family dinners, when I brought him home to meet my mom and younger brother, he turned every story into a chance to brag. My mom gave me a look across the table, a warning, but I brushed it aside. Love makes you forgive things you shouldn't. Jason loved Miami's social scene. Galas, rooftop lounges, charity dinners filled with people flashing money like peacock feathers. I often felt out of place in my outlet dresses, clinging to my glass of wine, nodding along to conversations about stocks and luxury vacations I couldn't afford. He teased me once, whispering, "Don't worry, babe. You're my little project. I'll polish you up." I smiled weakly, pretending it was a joke. But deep down, something cracked. Still, I gave him everything. Time, loyalty, love. I defended him when Eric muttered, "He only cares about money." I brushed off coworkers who hinted that Jason seemed too calculating. Because when you want love, you ignore red flags and paint them white. Looking back, I think Jason saw me as a stepping stone. I was good enough until someone richer, shinier, older came along. And when she did, the millionaire with the diamonds and the yacht, he didn't hesitate to trade up. But here's the twist no one saw coming. Life has a dark sense of humor. The day I moved into my new building, I thought I was stepping into a fresh start. The lobby gleamed with marble, the doorman greeted me by name, and the elevator smelled faintly of roses. I felt like an imposter hauling my thrift store suitcases into a place where residents wore tailored suits and carried dogs in handbags. But when the elevator doors opened on the top floor, I stepped into my penthouse and felt something shift inside me. For once, I wasn't ordinary. For once, I was exactly where Jason had always dreamed of being. And then I walked onto the balcony. The laughter drifted over first, then the clink of glasses. And when I turned my head, my heart dropped. Because standing just a few feet away, through the thin barrier of a shared balcony, was Jason. My ex. Except he wasn't mine anymore. He was hers. Jason's arm was slung around the millionaire, his smile smug, his voice carrying across the humid night air. "See, babe?" he murmured. "I told you. This is the life I deserve. And me?" I stood frozen, realizing fate had placed me right where I needed to be. Next door. The first week in the penthouse felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. Every time I stepped onto my balcony, I risked running into Jason. And every time I heard laughter drifting through the walls, I knew it was him, living the life he'd always said I wasn't good enough for. At first, I tried to avoid him. I timed my mornings around his voice echoing through the hallway. I slipped into the elevator when I knew he was gone. I told myself, "You're here for a fresh start. Don't give him the satisfaction." But Miami is small, and penthouse corridors are even smaller. Our first collision was inevitable. It happened on a Saturday morning. I stepped out of my apartment in yoga leggings, hair pulled back, headphones around my neck. Jason was standing at his door, his arm around her waist. The millionaire, glamorous even in a silk robe. For a moment, the world froze. His eyes met mine, disbelief flickering into irritation. "Rachel," he said. "What are you doing here?" I forced a smile. "Living," he smirked. "Here, in this building? That's rich?" His companion glanced between us, her lips curving in a faint smirk. "Jason, aren't you going to introduce us?" He shifted uncomfortably. "This is Rachel, my ex." She raised a perfect eyebrow. "Oh, that Rachel." Her tone was calm but sharp enough to cut. I didn't flinch. I just straightened my shoulders. "Nice to meet you. Enjoy your weekend." And I walked away, leaving Jason's smirk faltering. Later that day, Eric came over to see the new place. We stood on the balcony sipping beers when Jason's voice drifted over. "She's obsessed," he muttered to his new girlfriend, just loud enough. "She probably moved here to spy on me." Eric's jaw clenched. "Want me to say something?" I shook my head. "No, let him think whatever he wants." But inside, a fire sparked. If Jason thought I was still the weak, ordinary Rachel he discarded, he was about to learn how wrong he was. The next few weeks were a dance of unspoken battles. In the parking garage, Jason parked his sleek imported car diagonally across two spots. I parked my modest SUV neatly beside it, smiling as I watched him seethe at the contrast. In the lobby, he strutted with designer shopping bags. I strolled in carrying flowers from Eric, nodding politely to the doorman who now greeted me as warmly as any of the wealthy tenants. And on the balconies, our worlds collided nightly, his laughter forced, mine calm, deliberate. The cracks in his facade appeared sooner than I expected. One evening, I overheard an argument drifting across the thin walls. His new girlfriend's voice, sharp and clear. "You told me this deal was foolproof, Jason." "I didn't sign up to fund failures." His reply, furious. "It's just a setback." "Don't talk to me like I'm some nobody." A crash followed. Silence. I pressed my back to the wall, pulse racing. So not everything was perfect in paradise. The next day, in the elevator, Jason cornered me. His smile was tight, his eyes glinting. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked. I tilted my head. "What's not to enjoy?" "Beautiful view. Great neighbors." He leaned closer, whispering, "Don't play games with me." "You moved here to mess with me," I whispered back, calm, steady. "Or maybe I moved here because this is exactly where I belong." His jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw it. Insecurity flickering behind his bravado. But the moment that sealed it came one night on the rooftop terrace. Residents mingled over cocktails, the skyline glittering. I was chatting with a young couple when Jason strolled over, his girlfriend trailing behind in diamonds. "Careful," he said. "Rachel here isn't used to places like this. She's more of a budget wine kind of girl." The group chuckled nervously. My cheeks burned, but then I smiled. "Well," I said, "I live here now. Penthouse suite." "Guess I'm more high-end than you thought." The couple laughed with me, not him. Jason's smirk faltered. That was the first time I saw it. The shift. The balance is tilting. Later that night, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No signature, just 5 words: "Stay quiet, or you'll regret it." My hands trembled. Jason wasn't just annoyed. He was scared, and scared men are dangerous. The note, "Stay quiet, or you'll regret it," sat on my kitchen counter for days. I told myself it was nothing, a prank, maybe even Jason's pathetic attempt to scare me. But every time I walked through the lobby or stepped onto my balcony, my skin prickled with awareness. Jason was watching me. And then, just when I thought he couldn't sink any lower, he orchestrated the betrayal that broke me. It happened at a charity gala downtown. My company had sponsored a table, and as marketing manager, I had to attend. I slipped into a black dress, simple but elegant, telling myself it would be an ordinary night of shaking hands and sipping wine. But when I entered the ballroom, the first face I saw was Jason. He stood on the stage with a microphone, his millionaire lover at his side, her diamonds catching the light. Cameras flashed as they posed like royalty. "Tonight," Jason announced, "we're proud to donate a portion of our earnings to this incredible cause. It's proof that hard work and knowing the right people pays off." The crowd applauded. My stomach churned, and then his eyes found me in the audience. That smirk, that deliberate pause. "Of course," he continued, "not everyone understands ambition. Some people settle for ordinary lives, ordinary jobs, ordinary apartments. But me? I refuse to stay at the bottom." Laughter rippled through the room. I froze, nails digging into my palm. He wasn't just bragging, he was talking about me. "Success," he said, "is about trading up." And I did. The words hit harder than any slap. The crowd clapped, clueless to the cruelty beneath. His girlfriend pressed a kiss to his cheek, and Jason looked straight at me, victorious. I slipped out before the dinner was served, my chest burning, tears threatening to spill. On the sidewalk outside, the Miami air felt suffocating. Eric called as I stumbled toward my car. "Rach, where are you?" "I thought you'd be at the gala," I whispered. He humiliated me. "In front of everyone. Come home," Eric urged. "Don't give him another second of your energy." But the damage was done. Back at the Penthouse, I collapsed on the couch, still in the black dress, mascara streaking my cheeks. Every word echoed in my head. Ordinary, bottom, traded up. I thought about the years I'd given him, the dinners I'd cooked after long days, the money I'd saved to surprise him with a trip he never appreciated, the loyalty I had handed him like a gift, only for him to crush it under his polished shoes. And now, he'd turned me into a punchline. The next morning, my humiliation spread further than I imagined. A coworker slid her phone across my desk. "Isn't this your ex?" she whispered. There he was, Jason, quoted in the Miami Business Journal. His line printed in bold. "I refuse to stay ordinary." The article praised him and his millionaire girlfriend for their generous donation. And me? I was the ghost behind the word ordinary. I locked myself in my apartment that weekend, blinds drawn, phone on silent. I couldn't face Eric, couldn't face anyone. On Sunday night, I finally stepped onto the balcony for air. Jason was out there too, glass of whiskey in hand, grinning. "Quite the article, huh?" he called. I clenched the railing. "You won't get away with this," he smirked. "I already have." His girlfriend slipped her arm through his, whispering something that made him chuckle. They disappeared inside, leaving me shaking, humiliated, hollow. For the first time, I admitted it to myself. Jason had won. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was destroyed. That night, curled up on my couch in the dark, I whispered to myself, maybe they're right. Maybe I am nothing. But even as the words left my lips, something inside me stirred. Small, fragile, but alive, and it whispered back, "Not for long." The gala replayed in my head like a cruel film loop. Jason's smirk, the crowd's laughter, the word ordinary echoing through the ballroom. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flashbulbs, heard the applause, felt the shame tighten around my chest like a vice. By Monday morning, I could barely drag myself out of bed. My inbox overflowed with work emails, but I let them pile up. I ignored calls, ignored texts. Even Eric, persistent as ever, knocking on my door with pizza and jokes, couldn't break through. I didn't want comfort. I wanted silence. The world shrank to the four walls of my penthouse. Blinds drawn. Dishes piling in the sink. Half-empty bottles of wine littered the counter. I barely ate, barely slept. Every time I heard Jason's laugh through the balcony doors, I flinched. Every time I glimpsed his girlfriend's diamonds glittering under the lights next door, the wound deepened. I thought I had built something new by moving here. Instead, it felt like fate had trapped me in a cage right beside my tormentor. One night, I stood barefoot on the balcony, staring out at the ocean. The city lights blurred through my tears. I whispered, "Maybe he's right. Maybe I am nothing." The thought terrified me. Because for the first time in my life, I almost believed it. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was small, almost pathetic. I went to the grocery store one afternoon, hair unwashed, sunglasses hiding my swollen eyes. At the checkout, the cashier glanced at a magazine on the rack and smirked. Jason's face was on the cover, standing proudly beside his millionaire girlfriend. The headline, "From Ordinary to Extraordinary, Jason's New Life of Luxury." The word ordinary in bold black letters nearly buckled my knees. I abandoned the cart and fled the store, tears streaming as I drove home. When I walked into the apartment, Eric was waiting on the couch. He must have used the spare key. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Rachel," he whispered. "Look at you. You're disappearing." I shook my head, sobbing. "He took everything, Eric. My dignity, my future. Even my name. Ordinary." "That's who I am now." Eric grabbed my shoulders, his voice steady. "No, that's who he says you are. The Rachel I know? She's stronger than this." I laughed bitterly. "Stronger? Look at me," he softened, brushing a tear from my cheek. "Then prove him wrong." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at the glowing city. Eric's words replayed in my head. Prove him wrong? But how? Jason had money, power, a platform. I had what? I opened my laptop, scrolling through old emails, photos, and documents. And then I saw it. A message from Delia, an old mentor from my first marketing job, who now worked in corporate law. She had once told me, "Rachel, you see patterns other people miss." Patterns. I thought of Jason's Instagram posts. His business deals. The way his girlfriend's tone had shifted when I overheard her scolding him through the wall. Maybe Jason wasn't untouchable. Maybe he was reckless. And maybe, just maybe, I could prove it. The next morning, I dragged myself to the mirror. My reflection startled me. Pale skin, dark circles, hair tangled. I whispered, "This isn't who I am." For the first time in weeks, I showered. I ate. I opened the blinds, and then I sat at the desk with a notebook and wrote one word in block letters. Revenge. For hours, I scribbled. Every detail I remembered about Jason's habits. Every conversation I'd overheard. Every photo he'd posted online. I listed his weak spots, his obsession with status, his reckless spending, and his constant need to be admired. By midnight, my notebook was filled with arrows, connections, and ideas. It wasn't a plan yet, but it was a start. I closed the book and whispered, "You called me ordinary, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." The next day, as I left for work for the first time in weeks, a plain white envelope sat outside my door. Inside, a bank statement. Jason's name. Strange withdrawals. Dates that didn't add up. At the bottom, a note scrawled in black ink. Want to bring him down? Start here, my pulse quickened. Someone wanted Jason exposed, and they wanted me to do it. The envelope shook in my hands. A bank statement, Jason's name printed clearly at the top. But the numbers didn't make sense. Large withdrawals, transfers to shell accounts, strange movements that screamed of something dirty. And the note at the bottom, want to bring him down? Start here. I should have felt afraid. Instead, I felt awake. That night, I spread the papers across my desk like puzzle pieces. I highlighted dates, circled amounts. Slowly, patterns emerged. Money flowing in, money flowing out, often tied to consulting fees or luxury investments that sounded like smoke and mirrors. Jason always bragged about deals. Maybe they weren't real. Maybe he was bleeding money, covering losses with his girlfriend's wealth, faking success while pretending to have traded up. And if I could prove it, I could rip the mask right off his smug face. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I called Delia, the mentor I'd remembered during my breakdown. She was older now, sharp as ever, and her voice on the phone was like a lifeline. "Rachel," she said, "you sound different, stronger." "I found something," I whispered. "Jason's finances. They're wrong. I need help connecting the dots." A pause. Then her calm reply. "Bring everything to my office tomorrow, quietly." Her office smelled of leather and coffee, walls lined with books. I handed over the envelope and my frantic notes. She scanned them, her brow furrowing. "This," she said, "isn't just carelessness. These look like fraudulent transfers. He's either laundering money or lying about his assets." "Possibly both," my chest tightened. "So, it's real?" "It's real," she confirmed. "But we'll need more. Paper trails, witnesses, proof that ties him directly." I leaned forward. "Can we get it?" She smiled faintly. "We can. But Rachel, revenge is messy. Once you set this trap, there's no going back," I whispered. "I'm not going back. Not ever." Over the next 2 weeks, my life transformed. By day, I was still the marketing manager, smiling at clients, managing deadlines. By night, I became something else entirely. A woman rebuilding herself piece by piece, sharpening every wound into a weapon. Eric helped too. He tracked Jason's social media obsessively, printing posts, flagging inconsistencies. "Look," he said one night, "he posted from the yacht the same day these withdrawals hit. That can't be a coincidence." Delia guided me through public records requests. Quiet data pulls and ways to document everything without raising suspicion. And Carla, a woman who once worked for Jason's girlfriend, slipped me copies of emails. Fake invoices, inflated property valuations, exchanges that reeked of desperation. Piece by piece, Jason's empire began to look less like success and more like a house of cards. But Jason wasn't oblivious. One evening, as I unlocked my door, I felt eyes on me. Turning, I saw him leaning in his doorway, drink in hand, smirk plastered across his face. "Still playing house up here, Rachel?" he asked. I kept my voice even. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same," his smirk faltered. Just for a second, and I knew. He was nervous. By the 3rd week, we had enough to move. Delia sat me down in her office, a thick binder between us. "Rachel," she said, "with what we have, fake invoices, fraudulent transfers, proof of personal spending using investor money, we could go to the authorities right now." My pulse quickened. "Then let's do it," she shook her head. "No, not yet. If you want to truly end him, not just legally but socially, you'll need to expose him where it hurts most, in public, in front of the very people whose approval he craves." I knew exactly what she meant. The upcoming Skyline Investors Gala. The same event Jason had bragged about for weeks on Instagram, promising it would be his grand moment. What better stage? Delia said, eyes glinting. I thought of the night he humiliated me, calling me ordinary in front of hundreds. This was my chance to return the favor tenfold. That night, I stood on my balcony staring at the skyline. Jason's laughter floated from next door, but for once it didn't pierce me. It fueled me. I whispered, "You destroyed me once. Now it's my turn." The next morning, an invitation slid under my door. Glossy, gold-embossed letters. Skyline Investors Gala, featuring Jason and Rebecca Caldwell. And scribbled in ink at the bottom, in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Make sure you're ready. The city will be watching." The invitation sat on my counter like a spark waiting for gasoline. The Skyline Investors Gala, Jason's stage, his chance to flaunt the empire he'd built on lies. And thanks to Delia, Eric, and Carla, I held the matches. but before the gala, I wanted him rattled, shaken. Cracks formed in the mask before the crowd watched it crumble. The first strike was small, almost invisible. Delia helped me file an anonymous tip with the Miami Business Review. Attached were a handful of Jason's doctored invoices, just enough to suggest impropriety without naming names. 2 days later, the article went live. Whispers of fraud in Miami luxury investments. No names, no photos, just questions. But Jason's ego couldn't stand questions. That night, I heard him shouting through the wall. "It's nothing. Just jealous nobody's stirring rumors." His girlfriend's voice cut sharply. "Jason, investors don't like rumors." "Clean it up," I smiled in the dark. Rumors were seeds, and seeds grow. The second strike came through Eric. He tipped off one of Jason's rivals, slipping them hints of inflated property valuations Jason had bragged about. Within days, Jason's surefire condo project was scrubbed from an investor's website. The following morning, Jason cornered me in the lobby. His tie was loose, his jaw clenched. "You think this is funny?" he hissed. I tilted my head. "What's funny?" His eyes narrowed. "Stay out of my business, Rachel," I whispered. "Maybe you should worry less about me and more about your own business." He stalked off, fists clenched. And for the first time, I wasn't the one trembling. He was. The sweetest win came by accident. One of my coworkers forwarded me a local podcast episode. The hosts were gossiping about the mystery woman who exposed whispers of fraud. "You hear the story?" One laughed. "Rumor is it's some marketing manager who dated him. She saw through the act before anyone else did." My name wasn't mentioned. But hearing strangers laugh about him instead of me was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For years, Jason made me feel like the joke. Now he was becoming one. But Jason wasn't just cracking, he was spiraling. I watched from my balcony as he argued with his girlfriend night after night. "You told me this was airtight," she shouted. Jason snapped back. "It is!" "Someone's feeding lies, that's all." One evening, she slammed the balcony door so hard the glass rattled. Jason stood there alone, gulping whiskey straight from the bottle, his hands shaking. I should have felt pity. Instead, I felt power. The final small win came a week before the gala. I slipped into the investors' networking night, not to confront Jason, but to let whispers do the work. I didn't need to say much. Just a few murmured observations to the right ears. Strange withdrawals. Inflated invoices. A lot of smoke around his projects lately. Within hours, the whispers multiplied. By the end of the night, I overheard one investor mutter, "Maybe Jason's not as solid as he says." I walked home under the Miami neon lights, my heels clicking against the pavement. For the first time since the gala humiliation, I felt taller, lighter, stronger. But small wins weren't enough. Jason had humiliated me in front of hundreds, branded me ordinary for the city to see. If I was going to reclaim my name, my dignity, and my power, it had to happen the same way, publicly, and the gala was days away. That night, Eric found me on the balcony, notebook open, papers spread out. "You've got him on the ropes," he said. "He's shaken," I nodded. "But shaken isn't enough. I want him broken." Eric studied me, his voice softer. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Once you pull the trigger, there's no taking it back." I looked at the glittering skyline, Jason's shadow moving behind the balcony glass next door. My voice didn't shake. I've been ready since the night he called me ordinary. The morning of the gala, as I zipped up my crimson dress and slipped the evidence folder into my clutch, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Jason's voice, slurred and venomous. "If you show up tonight, Rachel, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." My hand tightened around the phone. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. The Skyline Investors Gala glittered like a coronation. The ballroom dripped with chandeliers, champagne towers sparkled, and Miami's elite buzzed with anticipation. For weeks, Jason had boasted online that this would be his night, his stage. His proof that he had risen above the ordinary, but tonight, the spotlight would burn him. Eric clasped my hand as we entered. My crimson dress caught the light, bold, defiant, impossible to ignore. Delia followed close, leather portfolio tucked under her arm, her expression sharp as steel. Across the room, Jason's eyes found me. For a moment, his smirk flickered. He hadn't expected me to come. His girlfriend, Rebecca, glittered beside him in diamonds, her hand possessive on his arm. She leaned toward him, whispering something that made him straighten, his jaw tightening. The game was on. The night unfolded with manufactured elegance. Speeches, laughter, the clink of glasses. Jason basked in it, shaking hands, posing for photos, playing the part of a man untouchable. When the MC announced his speech, he strode to the stage, Rebecca at his side. He tapped the mic, flashing that smile I once mistook for charm. "Thank you," he began. "Tonight we celebrate vision, ambition, and the future of Miami. I stand before you as proof that anyone can rise above the ordinary if they dare to seize opportunity." My chest tightened. Ordinary. He couldn't resist. Applause swelled. Cameras flashed. And then, before he could step down, I moved. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice clear as I stepped onto the stage. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jason's smile froze. "Rachel?" he hissed. "Sit down." But I took the mic. My hand was steady. "My voice is stronger than I imagined. I have a story to share," I told the room. "About ambition. About greed. And about betrayal." The ballroom hushed. From my clutch, I pulled the first document, one of Jason's forged invoices. I held it up, the projector behind us catching the bold, inflated numbers. "This," I said, "is how Jason funds his empire. Fake deals, false invoices, money stolen from investors who trusted him." Whispers erupted. Phones lifted to record. Rebecca's face blanched. Jason lunged toward me, but Delia stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Touch her and I'll have you arrested on the spot." "Every document has already been filed with the authorities," the crowd gasped. Jason froze. I pressed play on my phone, holding it to the mic. His drunken voicemail filled the ballroom. "If you show up tonight, Rachel, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." The silence that followed was suffocating. "This," I said, "is who Jason really is. A fraud, a coward, a man who thinks betrayal makes him powerful." Rebecca wrenched her arm from his, diamonds flashing as she stormed off the stage. Jason stood pale, sweating under the lights, his mask shattered. The MC stammered. Reporters shouted questions. Investors crowded forward, their faces livid. One man barked, "You stole from me?" Another hissed, "You're finished." Security moved in. Jason tried to protest, his voice cracking. "Lies, she's lying." But Delia raised the binder, her voice calm, deadly. "Every page is notarized. Every file is authenticated. The law is already moving." Flashbulbs blinded him. The crowd closed in. And Jason Carter, my ex, my betrayer, the man who called me ordinary, crumbled under the weight of truth. As security escorted him from the stage, I stood tall, the scar of my heartbreak burning into something else, strength. I wasn't the humiliated ex anymore. I wasn't disposable. I was the woman who brought him down. That night, back in my penthouse, I poured a glass of water and stared at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a new message, no name. Just 3 words, "Blood doesn't forget." My pulse quickened. The gala was over. Jason was finished, but my war with him and with the empire he built wasn't done. The morning after the gala, Miami buzzed like it had swallowed a live wire. News anchors dissected every clip. Headlines screamed across sites and papers. Investor exposed. Jason Carter's empire under fire. Penthouse power couple splits amid scandal. Woman confronts ex with evidence of fraud in front of Miami's elite. And the photos. Oh, the photos. Jason's face frozen mid-protest, sweat gleaming under the lights, Rebecca storming off in diamonds. And me, crimson dress blazing, binder in hand, chin lifted. For years, Jason had made me feel invisible. Now the entire city saw him for what he was, and they saw me standing tall. The fallout came fast and hard. By Monday, Jason's accounts were frozen. Investors pulled out, filing lawsuits. His condo project collapsed overnight. Rebecca Caldwell cut him loose, releasing a statement through her lawyers. I was unaware of Mr. Carter's fraudulent practices. Our association has ended immediately, neighbors whispered in the lobby. The doorman stopped greeting Jason with warmth. The once confident man who strutted through the building now slunk with his head down, avoiding stares. One night, I overheard him arguing on his balcony, his voice hoarse. They're exaggerating. It's not fraud, it's just strategy. But there was no one left to believe him. But revenge isn't clean. While Jason's world crumbled, I was left with the silence after the storm. In my apartment, evidence folders stacked neatly away. I felt both triumphant and hollow. Eric came over, carrying takeout, his eyes warm. You did it, he said. I shook my head. He's destroyed. But why don't I feel happy? Eric leaned back, studying me. Because revenge doesn't erase the pain. It just makes sure the person who caused it feels it too. I thought about that all night. Maybe revenge wasn't about happiness, it was about balance. Restoring the scales Jason had tipped against me. The legal grind began. Subpoenas, depositions, endless questions. Delia guided me through it, her calm steadying me when the weight threatened to crush me. At one deposition, Jason sat across the table, hair unkempt, suit wrinkled. He glared at me, his voice dripping venom. You think you've won? He spat. I met his eyes steady. I don't think. I know. For once, he didn't have a comeback, but the messages didn't stop. Anonymous numbers. Notes slipped under my door. Always the same theme. Blood doesn't forget. At first, I thought it was Jason, desperate and cornered. But something about the handwriting, the tone. It felt older, darker. Maybe someone else had skin in this game. Maybe Jason's fall had exposed more than just his own lies. One night, I sat on the balcony, envelope in hand, the Miami skyline glittering. I whispered, if there are more secrets, I'll find them. I won't stop now. The city didn't stop whispering either. At work, coworkers treated me differently, some with awe, some with caution. My boss pulled me aside, half joking. Remind me never to get on your bad side, Rachel. But the best moment came at a cafe. A stranger tapped my shoulder. She was older, her eyes kind but tired. You're the woman from the gala, aren't you? She asked. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I guess so, she nodded. My ex ruined me financially. I never fought back. Watching you? It gave me courage. Thank you. For the first time, I realized my revenge wasn't just mine. It was a voice for every woman who'd been called ordinary, discarded, silenced. Still, the shadow of Jason lingered. One evening, Eric found me staring at another note, hands trembling. Rach, he said, don't let him or whoever this is drag you back under. You're free now? Own it, free! The word sat heavily in my chest. For so long I'd been trapped in Jason's orbit, spinning around his needs, his lies, his power. Now I was untethered, and freedom, I realized, is terrifying. The next morning, a knock echoed at my door. When I opened it, no one was there, just a package on the floor. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was Jason's expensive watch, and a note. This doesn't end until you say it does. My heart pounded. Jason was ruined. But the question lingered. Was I ready to let go, or was there more revenge to take? The watch glinted under my apartment light, heavy with meaning. Jason's prized possession, the symbol he flaunted to prove he'd made it. Now abandoned on my doorstep with a note that read, "This doesn't end until you say it does." For a long time, I just stared at it. My hands trembled. Part of me wanted to hurl it off the balcony, watch it smash into the street below. Another part wanted to slip it on, claim it as a trophy, but instead I placed it in a drawer and closed it. Because that watch wasn't mine, And it wasn't his anymore either. It was nothing. Just like him. In the weeks that followed, Jason's empire unraveled completely. He lost everything: money, reputation, influence. The man who once strutted through Miami like he owned the skyline now moved like a shadow, hunched and forgotten. One day, I passed him in the lobby. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He muttered something under his breath, maybe an insult, maybe a plea. But I didn't stop. I didn't even look at him. That was the real revenge. Not humiliating him at the gala, not proving his fraud, but walking past him and feeling nothing. Eric came over one night with dinner, as he often did. We ate on the balcony, the ocean breeze warm, the city glittering. "You seem lighter," he said. I smiled faintly. "I am, for the first time in a long time." He leaned closer. "So, is it over?" I looked at the skyline, thinking of the notes, the watch, the lingering whispers. Then I nodded. For me, it is, because revenge isn't endless. If you stay in it too long, it becomes another cage. And I'd been trapped long enough. I started playing music again. Loud, joyful, the kind that made Eric laugh when I danced barefoot across the living room. I went back to work with new energy, no longer shrinking in meetings, no longer second-guessing myself. And one Saturday morning, I took that notebook, the one where I'd written "revenge" in block letters, and I burned it on the balcony. The smoke curled into the sky, carrying away the weight of every tear I'd shed over Jason. I whispered, "You called me ordinary, but I rose higher than you ever will. I don't know if Jason will ever forgive me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. Maybe forgiveness doesn't matter. What matters is that I am no longer defined by what he took. I'm defined by what I reclaimed. My strength, my dignity, my voice. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Tell me, would you forgive betrayal like this, or would you walk away forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.